Welcome back to OpenLine. Thank you for being with us on this Monday night. Clint Kelly's here from the Kelly firm talking about medical malpractice. And I just want to say, after our first show that we did together, I kind of felt, I'm like, man, we just dogged doctors that whole night.
Yeah.
There are definitely bad apples in every profession, and I think you even said it. It's those bad apples that give everybody a bad name, and there's only a few. You they're the repeat offenders.
Yeah, I think, Carrie, I've read in multiple places that 5% of the doctors commit 95% of the malpractice. So that tells you right there how much of this is are repeat offenders, as you say.
Without a doubt. So it makes you wonder, how do I know who those repeat offenders are? And there is a way now.
Right. In some cases, you can find out information about a healthcare provider that it won't necessarily tell you how many times that healthcare provider has been quote-unquote in trouble, but you can certainly find out if the Department of Health has cited that healthcare provider for impropriety. And I brought this today so that people could see. If you go to the Department of Licensure Verification, which is on the Tennessee Department of Health website, you can actually enter in the first name of your healthcare provider and the second name of your healthcare provider, and you list the city where that provider practices, and you click. And when you click, it will take you to a website. By the way, this is what the form looks like when you enter the information in. You'll see this. Hold
that up just a little bit taller there. Yeah.
There you go.
There you go, yeah.
There are boxes down here where you'll fill in the names of the healthcare provider that you want to check on. And then that site may put, and then going back to this, that site may put over here on the side a certification and an adverse license. You'll see it there, says adverse license. And you click on that, and if you click on that, the Department of Health will publish what's called a consent order. And a consent order merely tells you that if a particular healthcare provider has entered into basically a plea agreement with the state of Tennessee Department of Health, stipulating or agreeing that they committed some kind of impropriety. I've got this person's name X'd out, but in this particular case, it was a nurse who was using drugs. And the hospital found out about it where this nurse was practicing, basically told the nurse, you need to leave or else we'll tell your other prospective employer, and turned this thing over to the Department of Health. The Department of Health did an investigation and came to the conclusion that the nurse was in fact guilty of using drugs. But this same nurse was hired by another major hospital in this community before this consent order was made public, and now this nurse is working for another hospital.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's downright scary.
Yeah. And when you see something like that and you start digging around, you realize it's not a one-time deal. You'll find other nurses who've been in the same situation, who have been cited, in whether it's using drugs, using alcohol, writing prescriptions or getting hold of prescriptions and doing them for family members. They get caught from time to time, and if it is published publicly, patients can find out by going to this Department of Health website.
Another thing you were telling me that is scary, and it happens again just about in every job, when someone's on the line, they'll say, you resign, and we won't make a big deal of it.
Right.
But then it becomes somebody else's problem, and when you're in healthcare, lives are on the line.
Right.
I mean, this is wrong for doctors or hospitals or institutions to do this, to just let the problem pass on to not our nurse anymore.
Exactly. I think that, like I told you off air, I think the demand for nursing is so great right now, or for healthcare professionals in general, that some of this is overlooked in order to get someone employed. And everybody deserves a second chance. I mean, we can't overlook that. There are people who need help
and get it
and do fine afterwards. But it's the people that tend to bounce around from one hospital to the next, and then one state to the next, and they keep on getting rehired, and eventually they kill somebody.
Yeah.
And that's the situation that you're discussing, and I don't know what the solution is to it, but it's going to continue to happen so long as we have this particular system in place where it's kind of like a don't ask, don't tell. We won't report you to the next healthcare provider, the next hospital. We won't give a bad reference, but you need to leave.
Right. Right. Okay. We've got more calls on the line. Tammy's on the line. Thank you for being part of the show. Tammy, what's your question?
My question is, my sister went in for pneumonia back in 2014, December, and when they did a chest x-ray, they discovered some black marks on her spine, and they wanted to investigate that more, so they ended up doing more testing, and they said possibly that it was multiple myeloma. And when she got out of the hospital, they wanted her to come back in and do a bone marrow test. Well, 6 months later, they made the appointment for 6 months later, and in between this time, she kept going back into the emergency room, and she kept having problems with breathing, and legs are swelling, and red rashes on her legs, and it would move from one leg to the other. And the ER doctors kept saying it was COPD, even though in her charts it said possibility of multiple myeloma. Well, it ended up being that we ended up taking her to the hospital 3 times within a month period of time, and they kept saying it was COPD, sent her home with inhalers and hydrocodone for pain, for like a week's worth of pain. But you would always end up back in the ER, and they kept saying, well, it was COPD. Well, she ended up passing away with plasma cell leukemia.
I'm sorry.
When did she pass away, Tammy?
In September of 2016.
Well, you mean 15?
No, 16.
Well, what month? We're in 16.
I'm sorry, 2015.
2015.
She passed away in September of 2016,
right.
or 2015.
Gotcha.
Plasma cell leukemia, multiple myeloma.
Well, what I'd like you to do, Tammy, is call my office. I don't know if there's a case here, but certainly a death as tragic as this is, and someone going in and out of the ER constantly, it makes you wonder why this was missed. It sounds like that someone was looking at one thing and someone else was looking at another, and I can't account for why the cancer seemed to either elude treatment or for whatever reason she didn't get the care that she needed. And maybe she did. Maybe she got some care and it was just a natural product of the disease. But please call. I'll at least have Pat take a history on this, and I'll get back to you, Tammy, or have Pat get back to you on it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tammy,
Yes,
thank you for calling again. We will give that number here pretty soon, so just stay tuned for that. And what do you do when the person has passed away? Then what do you look at? Where does the benefit go if you take on this case?
That's a great question. In Tennessee, we have 2 different ways that money can be distributed upon the death of a loved one. If it's a child, then the money goes to the parents, if the parents still survive. If it's the parents, the money goes to the children by law. If there is another family member, if say the child lost his or her parents, then it would go to another family member. But in death, it's usually the closest relative is where the money would go, and it's divided equally. So if a parent dies and you've got 2 children, it would be split 50-50 with the children. If the parent leaves a surviving spouse, then by law the surviving spouse would get 1/3 and the children would get the other 2/3.
Okay, interesting. Let's get to Jim. Jim, what's your question tonight?
Yes. About a year and a half ago, I had a pacemaker put in by a doctor here in Tennessee. When I recently found out during one of my checkups that the battery was dying on the pacemaker, and I questioned them multiple times. Finally, they told me that it was due to a defective lead that they had put in, and they said that they had stopped using these leads, but asked them when they were going to fix it or what they were going to do, and they said they weren't going to do anything for at least a year and a half. So I don't know who to. I tried contacting the pacemaker company and got nowhere, and that's all. So I'm not sure who to turn to if I need to worry about this or just continue on the way I am.
Well, I would be concerned, but it's not a malpractice case. To me, this is a medical case, and the question is it prudent at this particular time to replace this battery? I don't know the answer to that, Jim. I will tell you there have been a ton of pacemaker lead cases over the last 10 years in a variety of different situations, but typically where the pacemaker lead is defective. You'll see these cases when you look them up on the internet. And I don't know the maker of this, the manufacturer of this pacemaker and what the situation is, but I'll tell you, if my doctor wasn't giving me a satisfactory response to this, if I felt like he or she was putting me off, I'd go get a second opinion ASAP, because that's one of those things, if it goes bad, it could kill you.
You don't want to be able to have a case once you're dead,
right,
because this thing was defective.
Right.
You just want to get it fixed.
It sounds like I would be concerned, and I would get a second opinion if I wasn't satisfied with what the doctor was telling me.
All right, good luck, Jim, on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Debbie's on the line. Debbie, thank you for calling in. What's your question?
Okay. Here about 2 years ago, I woke up very sick to my stomach and continued to vomit all day long. Later that evening, my husband called paramedics. I won't mention the name of the hospital or the county it was in. And they did 3 EKGs. Each EKG kept coming back abnormal. They did do blood work, and this doctor came in and told my husband he was releasing me, that he was going to give me something for nausea. I continued to get deathly ill overnight. The following morning, he put me in the car and rushed me to UMC Medical Center. Within 15 minutes, they walked in and told my husband, your wife has been in a heart attack for over 24 hours. And I was emergency transported to Centennial Heart. My question is this. I pursued this legally by 3 big attorneys. I won't mention who they are. And 2 of the letters that came back, they told me that, unfortunately, in the state of Tennessee, and this is my question, is that the doctors here in this state pretty much own the insurance company for malpractice in this state. I want to know if that's true.
In some cases it is. There is a company called State Volunteer Mutual Insurance Company, and they are one of the largest, maybe the largest, malpractice liability carrier in the state, and it is owned by physicians. Somewhat similar to what we have with State Farm. When people pay premiums, they have a piece of the company, if you will. They get dividends back, and so it is owned by the physicians, but that doesn't determine whether or not she has a case or whether the case should be pursued. And if a lawyer's telling her that, it sounds like a lawyer's trying to get rid of her case. That's what that sounds like to me, Debbie, from the way you're describing it, because it really makes no difference whether the doctor's insurance company is owned by them. Either you have a case or you don't.
Yeah. So she said this happened in 2014, I believe, with the statute of limitations.
Yeah.
Already ran out.
Does she have any hope with this?
It sounds to me like she doesn't, because obviously, you know, she went back, they told her she had a heart attack. A reasonable person would conclude likely at that time that they had been misdiagnosed. I don't know how they let, Debbie, I don't know how they let you out of the hospital with abnormal EKGs. That's just a stunner to me, but there's must be more to this situation than meets the eye. But I'm glad you called, because I want to remind everybody, I can't remind them enough, the statute of limitations in Tennessee is 1 year from the date of discovery of the wrongdoing. 1 year. If you wait 1 year and 1 day, you've waited 1 day too long, and you'll never see your day in court. So if you think you have been the victim of malpractice, or a family member's been a victim of malpractice, pick up the phone and call. It costs you nothing. But if you sit and you wait a year debating over it, wondering if it's the right thing to do, and then you finally decide because you can't go back to work, or because the situation's intolerable for you because the medical expenses are so high, you come back and say, well, now I want to do it, it's going to be too late if it's past a year. And there's a good number of cases, Carrie, I've had to pass on in my career because the client called too late.
And you got to hate that just for the person. They continue to suffer.
They do.
Nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take another quick break. We thank you for your phone calls tonight. A lot of good calls so
Yeah,
far. So if you
real
got
good ones.
another one, go ahead and give us a call tonight. We'll be right back after this break.